Mayor and Council meeting. I would like to call on Mr. Halsey to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Halsey. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hull. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is under my mayor's report. The first item is reading of the proclamation for Red Cross Month. Whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a special time to honor the kindness of our neighbors who aid families in need every day in Roswell, Fulton County, across the United States and around the world. Their dedication touches millions of lives each year as they carry out the organization's 140-year mission of preventing and alleviating suffering. Whereas during the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need, whether it was responding to this year's record-breaking disasters across the country or rolling up their sleeves to give blood when our country faced a severe blood shortage. Whereas in Roswell and Fulton County, local families have relied on Greater Atlanta Red Cross volunteers for comfort and hope while coping with home fires, the critical need for blood donations, and other emergency needs. Last year, Greater Atlanta volunteers in Fulton County alone assisted 1,294 residents after home fires, 137 of whom live within Roswell or surrounding towns with urgent needs like food, lodging, and recovery support. They also deployed to disasters such as the tornadoes in Georgia in the spring of 2021 and other disasters across our nation. Whereas the American Red Cross with 676 volunteers in Fulton County has supported local families in other ways too. Last year in Fulton County, the Red Cross performed 1,740 acts of assistance to our members of the military and their families, including assistance to 31 members of the military and their families in Roswell or surrounding towns, and conducted 6,260 training sessions in first aid, CPR, and other life-giving skills. Most hospitals in Fulton County administer blood collected by the Red Cross, and Fulton County residents made 52,938 blood donations through the Red Cross. Whereas this life-saving work is vital to strengthening our community's resilience, since the birth of the American Red Cross this month of March is dedicated to all those who continue to advance this noble legacy, and we ask others to join in their commitment to care for people in need. Now therefore I, Lori Henry, Mayor of Roswell, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Red Cross Month. I encourage all citizens to reach out and support this humanitarian mission. Let's give them a hand. And we also have Jessica Gebhardt from the Red Cross that is here to say a few words on behalf of the Red Cross. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. As you heard, I'm Jessica Gebhardt, and I work as a community volunteer leader with the Red Cross for North Fulton County. On behalf of the tens of thousands of Georgians who benefit from Red Cross services each year, thank you for recognizing March as Red Cross Month in the city of Roswell. Last year in Fulton County and across Georgia, more than 14,000 people turned to the Red Cross for help with emergency food, clothing, temporary shelter, health services, and emotional support following local disasters, most of which were home fires. It's been a tough year for everyone, but despite the pandemic, more than 70,000 people became new Red Cross volunteers in 2020, including myself and many residents of Roswell. This is the humanitarian spirit we honor during Red Cross Month. Thank you for helping us recognize all those who make our life-saving mission possible as volunteers, blood donors, financial supporters, and community partners. We invite all of you to join us for Red Cross Giving Day on March 24th and unite with thousands of people to help families in need. You can donate, volunteer time, or give blood to help. You can also learn life-saving skills like first aid and CPR to help your community. Visit redcross.org to learn more, or you can join us for one of our virtual open houses that will be held on March 1st and March 3rd. Happy Red Cross Month, and thank you for your time.
Thank you again. Thank you, Ms. Gebhardt, and also thank you to the Red Cross. I will tell you that whenever I am watching a disaster unfold or after a disaster has occurred on television, front and center is the Red Cross every single time. So you all are doing great work, and thank you again so much. And thank you for volunteering in our community. It means a lot to us. The next item on the agenda is the reading of a proclamation for the 150th anniversary of Zion Missionary Baptist Church. Whereas in 1871, a small group of residents saw the need to organize a community church to be called Zion Missionary Baptist Church. And whereas the first church building was a one-room structure built on land donated by some Caucasian citizens of Roswell, and this building also housed a school. The initial building was destroyed by fire in 1885 and was later rebuilt. Whereas in October of 1963, under the pastorate of the late Reverend P.L. Jones, the old Zion structure at 929 Zion Circle was torn down and a new edifice was built. Zion was blessed to march into the new sanctuary February 16th of 1964. Whereas in 1985, under the pastorate of Reverend Dr. Frank Lewis, a renovation project at 929 Zion Circle added a two-story educational administrative wing to the rear of the sanctuary. The addition added several classrooms, a conference room, enlarged the choir stand and baptismal pool, and increased the size of the church office and pastoral study area. And whereas Zion Missionary Baptist Church experienced rapid growth under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Frank Lewis for 31 years until his passing on August 5th of 2014. On March 18th, 2001, Zion marched from its original historic site at 929 Zion Circle, Roswell, Georgia, and moved into the current location, a 77,000 square foot edifice at 888 Zion Circle in Roswell, Georgia. And whereas the 14th senior pastor, Reverend Dr. Robert James, was installed April 30th of 2017, under Reverend James' leadership, the historic Zion Missionary Baptist Church remains steadfast in its commitment to serving as a refuge from the storms of life. To the community, to all who walk through its doors, through Zion Missionary Baptist Church's expanded technical expansion of communication through social media and worldwide outreach programs, the historic Zion Missionary Baptist continues to fulfill its presence in serving the Roswell community and Greater Atlanta and worldwide. And whereas Zion Missionary Baptist Church has continued to reach for higher ground in kingdom building, this great church is organized into several ministerial divisions with auxiliary ministries and blessed with eight choirs. The Zion Missionary Baptist Church has served its members for the last 150 years, and on February 28th, 2001, will celebrate its 150th anniversary. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Lori Henry, on behalf of the City of Roswell, wish to congratulate Zion Missionary Baptist Church on its sesquicentennial anniversary and call upon all of our citizens to recognize this special celebration. Thank you so much for all of your commitment to our community over the years, 150 years of commitment and outreach to folks in Roswell and Fulton County in Georgia. So, and I believe that Ms. McNair is going to be the first to speak, or I'm not sure. So if you'll give us some guidance on that, we would love to hear from you all.
It'll be me, Mayor Henry, Pastor Robert James. Again, on behalf of Zion Missionary Baptist Church, we're so grateful for this proclamation that you're sharing with us today. And we continue to be an impact in our nation, in the city of Roswell, as well as in our nation, where we're growing disciples, building up the body of Christ. So we're so grateful to be a part of the Roswell community. Even though I've only been here 5 years out of the 150, we're still grateful for the ability to make an impact in our community. So thank you again, Mayor Henry, and all the council members who are present, and even those who are watching online as well. Thank y'all so much for your supports throughout the year.
Thank you. And please know that we're always here in support of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else that would like to speak from Zion? Oh, we've got wonderful people in attendance and you're going to be quiet? You've got 8 choirs and you're going to be quiet?
Well, our pastor did speak on our behalf, and I just want to reiterate, we have on the panel, myself, Rebecca McNair, is the chairperson of trustees, and our deacon, Kevin Ellis, who's our chairperson of trustees, chairperson of deacons. And again, thank you. As our pastor has said it all.
Well, thank you all very much. Like I said, you're a very important part of the community. And if it wasn't for our faith-based organizations here in Roswell, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on, because you are a very, very important part of keeping us moving forward and keeping this community great. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor Henry.
The next item on the agenda is, I'd like to go ahead, if no one has any objections, to call the next 4 items together. We've got the approval of a Board of Zoning Appeals reappointment, Dan Seeger. We've got the approval of Design Review Board reappointment, Brendan Walsh. We've got approval of the Planning Commission reappointment, Allison Vroilich. And then we've also got the approval of a Historic Preservation Commission appointment, Sarah Winter. And I would like to say, before we even take a vote on this, that once again, I was talking about this with our faith-based organizations, but also with our volunteers in the city of Roswell, the time and effort that our volunteers put into helping this be a great city. We are all very, very appreciative for, and we thank everyone for stepping up to the plate and their willingness to volunteer on these boards and commissions. Do I have a motion for all 4 of these nominations? Councilmember Judy?
Motion to approve all 4.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Judy. Is that a second by Councilmember Wilsey?
Yes, second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda, and this one is actually, I should probably had a conversation with Ms. Press before this. So this number 7, we've got 2 items under number 7, and I'd like to split them into 2 conversations and 2 motions, because they're 2 very different items. We've got Mr. Fisher here that can speak to these items, but the first one is the approval for the mayor and the city administrator to sign a memorandum of understanding between the city of Roswell and North Fulton Community Charities to administer the Residential COVID Relief Funds grant. And I gave you a copy of this in your packet. And Mr. Fisher, I don't know if you're prepared to speak about this portion of it. I will go ahead and tell you all that in my conversations with numerous folks about the residential portion of this grant, which would be $400,000, that the good advice that I received from many is that right here in our own city of Roswell, we have North Fulton Community Charities. They deal with this on a regular basis. This is what they do best. And they have entered into MOUs with numerous North Fulton cities for this very same type of a grant program. So I had gotten together with Holly York of North Fulton Community Charities. We talked about their standard MOU, revised it a bit, and where we revised essentially was in Exhibit 2, the scope of services that really curtails this to our needs here in Roswell. So Mr. Fisher, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Mayor, that's what I was going to mention. If you wanted to look at Exhibit 2 when you have a chance, it just kind of explains what the grant will be used for. And the North Fulton Community Charities is set up to do this. They're already doing this with several of their programs anyway, and with some of the other cities in North Fulton. So it's kind of a seamless transition for them just to administer the residential side of ours also.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Does council have any questions? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a sample I see here. It's not a draft of the final agreement. So it's something for us to work on tonight. I don't understand, I say sample, but I don't know if it's a sample or a final draft. So, so let's go one by one here. So on packet page 374, point number 3, the last paragraph. So I don't know if Mr. Fisher can explain or take note and then explain all together. I don't know, Mayor, how you prefer to do it.
We can go ahead and address that. I'm sorry, I don't have the packet pages. Could you tell me what the
7A. So it's for the second page of, well, the first page of the. Point number 3, payment schedule.
Okay, got it. So page 374, which number?
2, and well, let's start with 2. Is they said blank, not to exceed, $sign and blank. So we need to fill this.
And is it, Mr. Halsey, is that where we would put the 400,000?
Yes.
Okay, does mine have it?
No.
Okay. Yes, so that would be 400,000 there.
Okay, then point number 3, the last paragraph. What does it mean?
So the minimum reimbursement when somebody receives a grant, the minimum reimbursement is going to be $10,000, and they won't be asking for reimbursements until they get to the first $10,000 of the eligible expenses.
Okay. Number 4, 30 days following the 1-year anniversary of the execution of the grant agreement. So can you explain this one, or why 1 year, not 6 months?
We're giving them 1 year to expend the funds, and then once the expended funds are completely expended, they have 30 days after that to give us their final report.
Okay, so we will go back about the expending time. That I also have a suggestion there. So then we go to Exhibit 2. Under budget, when describe the use to provide mortgage or rental assistance, utility assistance, childcare expenses, or, and here's my question, other necessary and prior approved living expenses. What does it mean?
It's under budget.
On the budget, on the third line, toward the end of the third line, other necessary and prior approved living expenses. Sounds very generic. I don't know what does it mean specifically.
We can take that out. That was inserted by our legal department.
I think the purpose of that is to track language from the federal program, because they have a list of prior approved living expenses that the program describes. And so this is to make sure that it's one of those expenses that are authorized by Congress.
And can we spell them out then to make it clear for
Congress
everybody?
has already spelled them out. And it's being done in accordance with that.
Okay. Then on the same paragraph toward the end, from March 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2021. So I will like to suggest to have February 28th, 2021.
That would be next week.
Yes, everybody until, for the last, from March, so the last 12 months.
So my question for you is,
Because we're talking about 20,000.
we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. So February 28th of 21 is next week.
Yeah, it's only $400,000. So it's going to go fast. So I don't know if you would want to go the whole year. That we don't know what is going to happen in July, August, September, October, November, December 31st, 2021. So I think what, I would suggest to take care of people in need right now. That I'm sure it's a lot of them, and it's only $400,000. So that will be my suggestion. Take care of first what is needed right now, which a lot of people in need. So,
Councilmember Zapata, I would disagree with you, but Councilmember Judy.
I think you leave it open-ended so you can spend all the money. If you put a date on it and we don't have enough people sign through the 28th, then it goes to waste. So I think you leave it open-ended.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. I'm not sure if Councilmember Zapata is going here, but perhaps what the thought process is, those people that have already been hit hard by this have these expenses and have deferred rent, and there's a population of people that are already waiting, perhaps to be candidates for this. And those would be the people that we would want to get to first, the ones that are already in the queue, so to speak, before there is a queue. Not to say that they can't apply after February 28th. It's just that they've already incurred, they're already in this place before the end of the month. So that these people that have been suffering a long time sort of are in first place before people that are maybe newly beginning to suffer.
Oh, and if I might, I think we also need to consider the folks that have been hanging on by a thread and that have been able, by the grace of God, to pay their rent or pay their mortgages, but they're going in default February, March, April. So I just think that we need to consider that as well. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So I think I agree with both Mayor Henry's point as well as Councilmember Hall or Councilmember Zapata's point, which is, so I guess first off, what I'll bring up is, $400,000 when we have over 95,000 residents. Just doing the math, if let's say if let's say the average ends up being $1,000, that's 400 people out of 95,000. So that's a very small percentage. So I think the greater risk is it's not enough money, not that it's too much money with limitations. And the reason I bring up, I think I agree with both Mayor Henry's points as well as Councilman Zapata and Council Members Hall's point is, I guess Councilman Zapata brought up February 28th, and perhaps that is too soon because to Mayor Henry's point, someone's potentially hanging on by a thread. And if they just enter, the default in the situation of March 1st, I think we want to have some type of lifeline. But at the same time, what I think I like about giving some type of date limit, whatever that right date is, whether it's March 31st, April 30th, whatever it is, I think it makes sense to have it be sooner than December 31st, just because, again, we're gonna run out. I anticipate, or my expectation is that this full amount will be spent, and I want to make sure it's spent on those that absolutely need it most. And I think those that absolutely need it most are probably the ones that are already struggling. And I think it would create a greater just motivation, assurance, communication to make sure that those individuals that are struggling are reaching out and getting involved with this. So again, I'd love to see a date. I think further in the future than February 28th makes sense. I also think sooner than December 31st, 2021 makes sense as well. So that's one comment I have. And then I guess the other comment I have, and it's a legal question, or I guess it's two. So the first one I'll mention is, even though Congress allows or other necessary and prior approved living expenses, without seeing the list here and all that, I lean towards preferring that we did just limit it to, if legal, and limit it to mortgage, rental assistance, utility assistance, and childcare expense, because I think those are such important priorities. Again, my concern is that certainly with that alone, I would think the full $400,000 would be needed and utilized. So that's one comment I have. But here's my legal question for Mr. Halsey. Now, this mentions for residents of for the city of Roswell, which is of course important, and I think we all agree upon. For the sake of argument, let's just decide this council decides they want to leave it at December 31st, 2021. Would this allow someone to move to the city of Roswell, October, November, and immediately start claiming it, or is there something in here that's gonna have it for all residents of Roswell as of now or something? I just want to understand kind of how that's working, because obviously that's a key detail, that it's solely for the residents for the city of Roswell.
As I read this, it would be, you would have to be a resident at the time you apply. And I think that the intent of the program, you would show that you were having some problem. If you applied in October for assistance with rent or any of these other expenses, you wouldn't, between then and December 31st, I think you'd have a difficult time showing the necessity. You probably could, but it would be a very small amount. If there's any money left, as you all said, it'll be gone by then.
And so with that, thank you for that that clarification, Mr. Halsey. I mean, the way I read it is potentially just the showing the past due and other different issues is the way to show it, I guess. And therefore, I guess my preference would be that it was based on someone that can show they're a resident of Roswell, basically as of today, as of the point of this passing. And then again, not knowing what the right date is, but preferring a date sooner than December 31st, 2021. So again, I think further out than Councilman Zapata's suggestion, but somewhere in between. So those are kind of my two reactions. And my final one before I'll yield my time here is, Mr. Halsey, there was a question that didn't really stick out to me, but Councilman Zapata asked, and now I still don't actually fully understand it. So the last sentence of number 3 payment schedule, it says reimbursement shall not be made until after the first. I'm not sure if that's 10,000 or 400,000, what that number should be, but whichever the number is, what exactly is that saying? I guess what's the actual impact of that sentence?
As I understand what that's saying is that's directed toward North Fulton Community Charities. They have to aggregate at least $10,000 before they ask the city to reimburse them.
Oh, okay, so they use this program, they give out $9,000 worth of support. They don't get money from the city yet. They then give out a 10,000. So now they've given 10,000. So now they can request some reimbursement. Is that right?
Correct.
Thank you for explaining that to me.
And one clarification point, I don't know if we talked about this before, but one of the things that North Fulton Community Charities requires when anyone asking for their assistance, North Fulton Community Charities does not write checks or give money to individuals. So if you're a person in need, you're behind on your rent, they will write the check to your landlord. If you're behind on your utilities, they will write that check to the utility companies. So that just cuts down on any fraud that could be committed. And the other thing too, and we can put in that you need to be a resident of Roswell, Georgia as of today in order to apply for this funding. It would also, to me, be highly unlikely, and I don't mind putting it in there, because if you are going to move to Roswell, you have to have the financial wherewithal to sign a lease, to qualify for a mortgage, to have your utilities turned on, and all of those are scrutinized fairly closely. And then you would have to default on any one of those before you could have them reimbursed by North Fulton Charities. So I think that the likelihood of somebody coming in just to game the system is very unlikely. But like I said, I have absolutely no problem putting a line in there that basically says must be a resident of the city of Roswell on today's date. I'm good with that. Yes, Mr. Halsey.
If you bring up that December 31 date to an earlier date, this says that it's approved living expenses solely for residents of the city of Roswell who have demonstrated an economic hardship directly related between March 1, 2020. So there's your beginning date. They have to be a resident of Roswell as of March 1, 2020. And if you pull that December 31 date, say to August 1 or September 1, then there would be between 1 and September 1. And that would ensure that anybody who came to Roswell was able initially to keep up, but because of COVID, they weren't, they would still be eligible if there's money left.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, following the spirits of this $400,000 help, I think the idea is to get them in the hands of the people in need as soon as possible, not waiting a year. And given the experience and expertise of North Fulton Charity to assist people in need right now, I think that the solution will be to have the $400,000 have to be distributed by May 31st, 2021. So we give them 3 months to distribute these funds, given their expertise and knowledge. So then we can help right now. Because this is, I understand, at least from my perspective, is people in need right now, today. We need to help them as soon as possible. So sitting on top of the money for a year, I don't know how effective and comply with the spirit of the help of people in need right now. So maybe, having to distribute the $400,000 by May 31st, 2021, give them 3 months to help the people in need right now. So that might be an option to expedite the help. And also, I would like to comment on the $3,000. I would prefer to see helping more people, which will be less than helping just a few with more. So I will recommend to move from $3,000 to $1,500, the maximum assistance. So this way will allow to help more people out of the 95,000 or so residents in the city of Roswell, which a few of them might be in need right now. So that would be also my proposal, my suggestions to give a deadline to distribute the funds, and reduce from 3,000 to 1,500.
Councilmember Zapata, I will tell you the 3,000 is North Fulton Community Charities standard reimbursement amount. Councilmember Judy.
Yes, Mayor. I don't think putting a date on the end, I'm willing to move it out further, but I don't think putting a date of May 31st is going to make the money go any faster or slower. I think the need is going to come as is, and we're going to run out at some point. So I see the end date as kind of an end date because we're really not going to need it, because I believe we're going to run out of money for assistance. And why give an end date when we can help more people if we still have more money in the in the hamper? I don't see that expediting the people who sign up. But I'm open to a earlier date than December 31st. And I also think the idea that was brought up about the date of as of this resolution is good, even though it's kind of covered in the dates from March 20th of last year. So that's my point. I just the end date to me is kind of is what it is. It doesn't. I think we're going to run out of pretty quickly.
Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you. In the interest of attempting to actually get this money into the hands of those who need it, let me make the following suggestions. On the first item, prior approved expenses or the other necessary and prior approved, Mr. Halsey, if you just add in there, as listed or called out by whatever congressional act it was, I think that spells it out very clearly. As far as the end date, I agree. I'm not sure that it makes much difference, but let me give an end date that makes more sense to me, and that would have it be coterminous with the end of our fiscal year. That way we know whether we're going to bring the money back in-house if it hasn't been spent, or whether we have it again. So I would make it end at the same time as our fiscal year, and I would leave the 3,000. There's folks that may need that much to stay in their home. And if we bring that number too far down, we might just not have enough for someone to stay where they are. So I'd like to leave that number. Those would be the three suggestions that I would make so that we can get this money out where it needs to go.
Councilmember Wilsey, did you have you had your hand up? So.
Yes, I did. I would concur with those suggestions, and I just also wanted to mention that I believe in that budget sentence, the last sentence there specifying between March 1st, 2020, is really more of a definition that the economic hardship is directly related to the impacts of COVID. I think if we moved that date up, I think the spirit of that is the definition of the pandemic. If we want to have a separate application date that is more current, I think that might be acceptable, but I'm not sure that it's necessary as long as we're just getting these funds in the hands of North Fulton Charities to distribute as they see as appropriate and as by the guidance that we've given them in this document.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So a couple of reactions. I guess first off, I think what I'm hearing is regarding the dates. I heard the true end date of when something can be done, so that we know, is being the fiscal year end date, which would be June 30th, 2022, if I'm hearing correctly for that part of it. And what I heard, I believe from Councilman Judy, was an appetite similar in line to what I was discussing and Mayor Henry discussing of a different date. So of course, not February 28th, but also not December 31st, 2021. So finding some date prior to December 31st, 2021, if I was understanding that correctly, and maybe I wasn't. So, but again, that's something I'd like to discuss, because I think we all agree this money's going to go fast, and just really wanting to make sure that we're leaving it available to those that most need it and urgently need it. And in regards to that, I guess I just have two more comments. One of them is back to the other necessary and prior approved living expenses. So with that, yeah, I understand from a legal standpoint, it makes sense to point to what Congress has approved. But I guess just my concern is I have no idea what those are. And what I do know is that mortgage or rental assistance, utility assistance, and childcare expenses, I see those as absolute priorities and really needed to really take care of these residents. And my concern is, if we all agree that the $400,000 is going to run out, I guess I just don't love the idea of knowing that before everybody gets their mortgage or rental assistance, utility assistance, or childcare expenses, there could be other expenses covered that are draining that. And that's where my concern is, with the unknown that we all have no idea. It might be a great list that we all support. It might be a list that we all say, no, those other things really are more important. So that's my kind of thought there. And then my only other one is, and I'm not that passionate about the topic, but I'll just bring, I certainly hear that potentially $3,000 might be the right amount to ensure someone is able to stay in their home. At the same time, I also know by having that large of a number, it means we're helping a much smaller number of residents stay in their home. Because again, if it was $1,000, then that goes to 400 people, and that ends up representing less than 0.5% of all Roswell residents. If we're going to triple that number, we're now talking, potentially, 0.1% of Roswell residents. And again, I want to make sure we're helping as many people as possible. So I think there is a lot of room and opportunity for good consensus and hopefully unanimous decision today. But I just wanted to raise those concerns and hear people's thoughts.
And Councilmember Palermo, I will say the 3,000 came from the guidance of North Fulton Charities. That's what they have found to be reasonable, expectable, and can get people out of a tough position. And so I took that from Holly York's suggestion. That's what they put theirs at, and she suggested that for us as well. So that's where I got that figure. It was her recommendation, and $3,000, that's maybe gonna get you 3 months of an apartment, probably not. Maybe 2 months of an apartment and one utility, but I can't judge that. I know in my house, $3,000 doesn't go a long way on a monthly basis. So and what we want to do is help people. We don't just want to put a Band-Aid on something. We want to help people. And if we can get them out of a jam and keep them in their homes, I think that's our goal. I don't have any problem personally removing the other necessary and prior approved living expenses. If we'd like to pull that out, I don't have any problem with that. I think those would include things like food, medications, things of that nature. But we can pull that out. I don't have any problem with that. If we just want to stick to mortgage, rent, utilities, and childcare, we can do that. And that's perfectly defendable. Councilmember Tizer?
Thank you, Mayor. That's fine. That's fine with me if it gets the money out where it needs to go. Just to be clear, when I talk about the end of the fiscal year, I'm talking about June 30 of 2021. That's 4 months from today. That's the end of the fiscal year I'm referring to.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. I just had a question going back to Councilmember Wilsey, and I think, I don't know if I missed the point. We're going to end the program or basically say the hardship needs to have been incurred between the March 1st and say June 30th. Is there a final time to make your application? I wasn't sure if that was the question. Are we going to say that you have to apply before September or October? and your hardship has to have incurred before June 30th, or basically you just have to apply by June 30th and it's done? That's my question.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because what I was just thinking too is Councilmember Zapata was saying he wanted this money to go to people in need now today. Well, they wouldn't qualify for this. So right now, if you're 3 months behind in your mortgage or your rent or your utilities or your childcare, you could not qualify for this right now, because this says between March 1st, 2020.
That's last year.
Oh, 2020. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Right.
So I was looking at 21 again. Okay, perfect, thanks. Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And yes, good questions, Councilmember Hall. Yes, my suggestion was to leave this period, the pandemic period of March 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. But if we wanted to add a date for applications to begin, that would make sense, unless we want North Fulton Charities just to be able to look at what they have, at the request that they have in-house already. That's something I'm not sure about, you know, what the terms are written as, but definitely something for, just a question that I would have, and certainly open for discussion.
And let me throw this into the mix, because we've talked about it as well, and we will talk about it with our business end of the grants. But you know, some folks don't really have good access to internet. Some folks are going to need help applying for this. Some folks are going to be very computer literate and savvy and be able to apply right away. And the suggestion in the community is we get the information out to our residents, we let them know, we give them maybe 2 weeks, a week, whatever, and say you can start applying on this date. And so you can get all of your information that you need together so you can apply right away once it opens up. So I would recommend that we do something along those lines. And that gives everyone a equal playing field on this, because people that can use the internet and get on there right away and fill out that application, that's great. They're gonna get in there first. So you know, if you know someone, have a neighbor, a friend of a friend, or a friend that doesn't have that capability, that's not good on the internet, that generally can only go to the library for computer services, I think that we should give them the opportunity to work with North Fulton Charities, make sure they've got all of their application ready by the time we open it up for applications. So what do you think about that? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Well, yeah, in a spirit of compromising, I can move my suggested May 31st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. I can move this in a spirit of compromising. And then I can also, you know, like to compromise with you who support the 3,000 and with the you that with the us that support 1,500 to move it to $2,250, which is halfway, in a spirit of, you know, compromising. So we all might not be happy, but we all are so kind of happy halfway, meeting halfway between 1,500 and 3,000. So those are my two. And also, if we don't know, we don't understand what others necessary and prior approved living expenses means, we either take it out or we spell it right now. But you know, passing something that we don't even know what it is, I don't think that makes sense. So I will support, you know, suggest two things: we either take it out or we right now understand all the other necessary prior approved living expenses that is referring here. So those are my three comments on the Exhibit 2.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And I'd say I think all those compromises seem reasonable to me. And again, yeah, with the other necessary and prior approved living expenses, I certainly could see myself supporting many. It's just I don't like the idea of moving something forward without really knowing exactly what it includes, because I don't want to just rely on what Congress has done without knowing what they've done. The only other two things I'd add are, one, I know there was consensus for it, even though it, I agree it's not realistic or completely necessary, but I think it still makes sense to just include that to apply, you must be a Roswell resident as of today. So that's one addition. And then the other thing is that Mayor Henry mentioned that I think was great. And I know it's their policy, so I know it's no risk, but again, knowing this is a vote and our citizens, et cetera, will be watching. I prefer to put something in here that does just spell out what we expect, which is North Fulton Community Charities policy, that they're not going to give an individual money. They're going to pay the utility company, they're going to pay the mortgage company, et cetera. And again, I know that's what they do. So, but I would just prefer to be able to show the taxpayers that here's exactly what we set up in the agreement. And we know that North Fulton Community Charities does a great job of executing on.
Additional comments, questions? Do I have a motion? And Councilmember Tizer.
All right, let me see if I can put this together here. Motion to approve with the following changes. Deletion of or other necessary and prior approved living expenses. Add somewhere in that paragraph, please, that the applicant must be a resident of Roswell as of, I'm fine with today's date. And I would like to leave the $3,000 as it is. I think I've got everything that we've been talking about.
Did you want to make the clarifying point that all expenses paid by the applicant must go directly to
Provider?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, expenses. Yeah. How if you phrase that, grantees reimbursements of expenses shall be made directly to providers.
And do you want to change the date to June 30th?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Please change the date to June 30.
One of the things that I heard, and I don't know if you want to include it in your motion, a deadline for applications. If we're going to use June 30th as the last date of eligibility, I was thinking you might want to say applications must be made by September 30th, because they would have to demonstrate that they incurred the expense between the dates of March 1, 2020 and June 30, 2021, but then you give them a couple of months to get their things together to apply.
Councilmember Tizer, do you agree to that in your motion?
I'm trying to figure out exactly what he just said. Could you clarify that, please, sir?
In other words, if you set a June 30 deadline for expense eligibility, what I heard a couple of council members say, we need to have an application deadline, and it would have to be beyond the date that you incurred the expenses. And so I'm suggesting 60 days past that date, which would be September 30th.
I think I could live with 30 days past that date. If you're in big trouble, you probably ought to get your application in as soon as possible.
All right, so August 30th.
That would be my motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Tizer, clarifying points. Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you. Yeah, 30 days will be July 31st, just to clarify. 30 days will be July, no August, like you said, July 31st.
Okay.
Correct.
2021. This will be 30 days. All right.
Additional questions? We've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. This is very exciting news for residents of Roswell, and I know it'll be very much appreciated. Okay, so the next item is to approve the application and qualification process for the commercial COVID relief grant funds. And I will ask Mr. Fisher to present this. He's worked on this a great deal, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. What I'd like to do real quick is share my screen, and I can go back and forth once we get going if you need to be able to see for questions. But this is the commercial application side of it, the small business side. And what you're looking at right now, everything that's in black, the font that's in black is what was sent out to you in the packet. So since that time, I think everybody has sent in some comments or suggestions already. Excuse me. So what I've done is I have redlined the comments in here. It doesn't mean it's approved yet. We're looking to get that today. So don't worry. This isn't an approval yet. But what it does is it shows all the comments so we have something to talk with. The first red line that you'll see at the top is actually what we just talked about from the residential side. We changed the dates a little bit. So we would announce it after tonight once the program is approved. And then Sandy Springs had made this suggestion also, give a couple of weeks before you start taking applications, because if it's on a first come, first served basis, some businesses are much more sophisticated than others and can pull their stuff up right away and get it put in. So what we're going to say is in 2 weeks, we'll open up the process on March 8th. The process will go through March 22nd. That's when the applications will be able to come in. We will start reviewing those on March 23rd, and we'll be able to start providing the grants by March 29th. So this whole thing can be done in a 1 month period with those dates, and it gives everybody ample opportunity. Well, 2 weeks. So I'm assuming they're going to need that money. So they're going to be able to work on that. So that's what the dates are for. As you go down to the eligible businesses, the one thing I did forget, which was certainly spoken of in the last meeting, was home-based businesses are not eligible for the grant program. So my bad, I did put that in. And then they must meet the following requirements. So this is where we're probably going to sit for just a minute. The very first requirement, based on the meeting the other night, was not to have received any federal grants. In parentheses, I've got the PPP related to COVID-19. Now, based on the comments that I received back on email, that's other than the EIDL loan, which that loan is acceptable. It was a long time ago. It wasn't very much. So if they receive the EIDL, I think the comments are that it would still be acceptable for them to have that and to be able to go forth with the application process. There's a minimum of 100 employees. Business license and all debt, of course, to the City of Roswell will be paid in full. There was a comment made for not to limit the maximum revenue of $1 million for 2020. Some businesses just have more revenue, but that doesn't mean that their profit was impacted in a bad way. So it could be they have higher priced products or some type of an industry that just deals in more funds, but their profitability may still be at that 25% or less. So a comment was received to just not worry about the revenue maximum, but let the new number 4 deal with that, which was the decrease in revenue of at least 25% during that time period. Number 5, again, home-based business, I wanted to make sure that that was in there, that those were not eligible. So I think that's where you probably want to focus. I'm going to stop right there and just ask if there's any comments. If it's okay, do you want me to stop sharing my screen, or you want me to leave that up while you talk about it?
It might be helpful for now to leave it up. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Fisher.
Okay.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Just a couple of points. The EIDL program actually had 2 components. The first component was a grant program, and those were grants, EIDL grants, that were actual up to $10,000. And then they were the EIDL loans, which are regular SBA loans just made under the disaster program that are paid back. So I just want to be clear as to what we're talking about here, that if they got a PPP loan or a PPP, or I'm sorry, EIDL grant, they would not be eligible. Or if we wanted to put some criteria around the EIDL grant, because those were small, those were $10,000 and under. So just want to put that out there for my colleagues to discuss. I didn't have a chance to, I thought that was emailed, but I think it was just not very clear. And then I did share something with y'all late today. I feel strongly that we do need to keep $1 million in revenues. $1 million is a fair amount in revenues, and that speaks to the real little guy, the smaller business that may have been left out of some of these programs, and they're the ones that are really hurting and struggling just because they didn't get a chance to participate in some of this or have the opportunity or wherewithal. So those are my 2 comments on that.
Mr. Fisher, I believe you had a response to the beginning.
I did. I was going to say to Councilmember Hall's comment that it was looked at both ways in the comments that were received, and specifically like what's on this sheet, that the EIDL loan would still be an acceptable form if they receive that, but the EIDL grant would not be. So it was actually spelled out in the comments that were received, but I mean, y'all can certainly talk those through, but yes, there was 2 different ones. Thank you.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So couple of things here. On your eligible businesses, point number 3, can we make sure that we have a 2021 business license? So it's clear they have to have a 2021 business license on this point number 3.
Sure.
Okay, so my other point is point number 4. I think that, $1 million in Roswell really helps the small businesses. So, and I understand we have around 96 businesses who have a less than $1 million in revenue, 96. So if you divide 400,000 by 96, give you around an average of 4,000 and change per business. So I think that I would like to start with $1 million to really help the smallest business we have in Roswell. And then if we have funds at the end, we can review if all the under 1 million apply and nobody else apply and we still have any funds left, we can review the revenue amount. So, but I would like to start with $1 million and go from there to really help the small ones, the true small businesses.
Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 comments. The concern that I had with the $1 million was with the group of 11 to 99 employees, and more specifically, some of our restaurants. Many of our restaurants are easily over $1 million, and I think that was my concern. So whatever the number is, I just wanted to be able to include many of them. And then I'd like to hear from my colleagues how you all feel about eligible use number 2, the ability to buy machinery and equipment with it. I understand working capital, I understand payroll, healthcare benefits, all that makes complete sense. Just not sure what the thinking is for machinery and equipment. Contract labor, I get, supplier payments, rent, lease, all that makes complete sense to me. I understand that. I'm just not sure what our thinking is there. I can be convinced, either way. I just want to understand it.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. And so I'd say, first of all, to answer that most recent question, I'm indifferent. So if this council prefers to leave machinery and equipment or to remove it, I'm fine either way. Going back to the $1 million, because yeah, I think it was a good exchange over email that we had on this, and Councilman Tizer brought up the concern that for businesses with 11 to 99 employees with $1 million revenue or less, the concern that actually that might really create a small number, and that's where we found Mr. Luckett had sent us that there's actually many more businesses, I believe, than just 96 that have under $1 million in revenue. But in that employee group for between 11 to 99, there's 96. And so even if we were just giving it to them, let's say we were ignoring the groups with 1 employee, the groups with 2 to 10 employees, and we were only giving it to 11 to 99, even still, we would be able to only be able to fund a third of those, and then that's where obviously the other criteria gets in to help kind of narrow down that third of the 96. And frankly, my concern is there are a lot of businesses that are under $1 million, and those are a lot of the ones struggling. And Councilman Tizer brings up restaurants, which I certainly want to see be helped here as well. And my guess is that there potentially is a number of restaurants that are under $1 million. Perhaps they were closed for a longer period during their lockdown. Perhaps they don't have outdoor seating. Perhaps their food is a type that is more something people want to go and eat in person versus getting takeout. I think there's just so many businesses that are struggling. And although I'd love to obviously be helping as many companies as possible, I want to make sure we're really helping those that most need it and most struggling. And for that reason, I do think the $1 million limit is an important one, because again, we've got 3 different segments of employee population. We've got so many businesses, and even to see that just from the 11 to 99 employee segment, that right there, we've got 96 that are under $1 million. And we didn't even have Mr. Luckett run how many are there in the 2 to 10 frame. And so that's what I think is important, just to make sure we are getting those businesses that really are hanging on by a thread.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify what the machinery and equipment might be applied for. I think that might be for equipment or things that a business might have had to purchase in order to operate during COVID, or to adjust operations such as air purifiers or sanitizers or tents or extra tables for outside dining. Things like that allowed them to continue safe operations during the pandemic. And I'd like to see it included. If you choose to remove it, that's fine too, but I just wanted to provide some clarification on what that referred to.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilsey. I'd like to add to that list heaters.
Right.
Because I know that's a very hot commodity right now. Right. Councilmember Judy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was getting ready to say the same thing. I think that maybe we could say pandemic imposed machinery and equipment, where somebody's not buying a new margarita machine or a new tractor or something to cut the yard. Maybe we specify machinery and equipment to make that more palatable.
Yes, Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you. I'm fine with that that change, if that's how y'all want to spell it out. I just wanted to understand it more.
Additional questions, comments from council? Do I have a motion? And by the way, no one is in the public waiting to speak on any of the items on the agenda tonight, so that's why I haven't gone to the public. But do I have a motion? Councilmember Palermo.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve with the adding back the $1 million limit. And I guess I would just ask for a little clarification on Councilman Judy's suggestion on the clarification that we should provide.
Second.
I could suggest language. Councilmember Judy,
Please,
I think
Mr.
what I heard you say is that if anybody spent money required by, say, Governor Kemp's emergency decree, that equipment would be eligible.
and that would include heaters and stuff like that. Yes.
Okay, that would be my motion. Motion to approve with, that includes the $1 million limit for 2020 revenue and also Mr. Halsey's language on the equipment.
Second.
Mr. Fisher, do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to be sure we're adding in on number 3 that it's for the 2021 business license, because we said where you need to show that, and I'm just going to add that in there as part of it.
Yes, and because to be clear, what that basically means is they have to be updated on all their, required licenses, which includes their 2021 business license.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Okay, and is that, and I guess actually whether this question's for Mayor Henry or Mr. Fisher or Mr. Halsey, is that as of today? Is that as of the time they apply? When should that be?
As long as it's on their application, because this one will be totally online. So it'll basically, we wanted it to be quantitative. So it'll basically be check boxes. So when they make their application, once we review it, our finance department will go through the list and just say, yes, no, yes, no. Do they have a license? Don't have a license. So if they get it the day before they send it in, then we're paid in full. So we're good to go.
Okay, that's fine with me as long as it's fine for this council.
Councilmember Hall, did you have a clarifying question?
Yes, Mayor Henry, thank you very much. I just want to be clear. So people that receive the EIDL grant are still eligible to apply for this with the city or no?
Not the way that it is right now. The only thing, the comment we had was the EIDL loan was okay, but the grant was not. And that's what we have.
Then I would suggest, oh, I didn't see that language. I saw that PPP was spelled out, but the EIDL grant was not.
I didn't. The only thing it says is you cannot receive any federal grants related to COVID-19 other than an EIDL loan, which is acceptable. So I didn't spell out all the ones that weren't.
Then should we, next to where it says PPP, should it just say including PPP?
Excuse me, Councilmember Palermo, you haven't been recognized.
Okay.
Mr. Fisher, were you finished with your explanation?
Yes, ma'am, of where we're at right now. Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Palermo.
I'm certainly flexible on this, but I suggest just a way to clarify there is it should say parentheses include, for example, including PPP. So it's not saying that's all inclusive. If that works for this council, again, I'm flexible on how we should spell that out or what you all think.
Could you recommend language on that, Mr. Halsey?
I have to think about that one.
Okay. Mr. Fisher, do you have recommended language?
Well, the idea is that you can't receive certain federal grants. I could have and I could have IE, PPE, I could have EIDL grants that are related to COVID-19 pandemic. And then we could say other than the EIDL loan, which is acceptable. So we could just spell it out in there. We'll work on that wording, but if that's agreeable with everybody, I'll get that in number 1.
And Mr. Halsey said that'll work. Okay. So Councilmember Palermo, do you agree to amend your motion?
Yes, I'll amend my motion based on what Mr. Fisher and Mr. Halsey have just discussed for item number 1.
Okay.
So we've got a motion by Councilmember Palermo. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Zapata. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Again, thank you very much. I appreciate your votes on that item. And now I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Wilsey for Administration and Finance.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up is item number 8, approval to implement employee pay range and pay increases as recommended by the 2020 Compensation and Classification Study and approval of a budget amendment number 2/22/21 in the amount of $934,105. This item will be presented by Jim Harner, Human Resources Director.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is seeking approval to implement the recommendations of pay range increases and associated pay increases recommended by our 2020 compensation and classification study. City policy does state that the HR division is to periodically conduct these types of comp and class studies to ensure the city remains market competitive with competitors for labor. The last study we did for all the city classifications was done in 2015, and those recommended pay grade adjustments were implemented January 1st, 2016. Since that time, we have done a smaller, more focused market survey and associated increases in pay grades for our police sworn positions. Those were done in fall of 2018. This current study began or was undertaken at the beginning of 2020, and it concluded early last fall. It was conducted by Evergreen Solutions. The focus of the study was to look at both internal and external equity. And what that means is, from an internal standpoint, there was a job description review. Employees had the opportunity to fill out job analysis questionnaires where they looked at their current job description, gave feedback on what they actually did and how accurate the job description was. The supervisor then reviewed and provided their own feedback. In addition, employee focus groups were conducted last spring. And then from an external equity standpoint, that was comprised of a market survey of 13 other municipalities where we went out with benchmark positions and said, okay, Roswell's pay grades for these positions are this. What are yours for that position? And the job descriptions were sent with them in case there was a small variation in the title, to be sure we're comparing similar jobs to similar jobs. That study, when it came back, the market survey found that Roswell's pay grades lagged the 50th percentile or mean of the market by an average of 9%. Some a little more, some less, but an average of 9%. So the recommendations of the study are to increase the city's pay ranges to be competitive at the 50th percentile, and then to increase the associated amount of the employee's pay slotted into the new pay range at the same penetration or same percent over the minimum of the current pay grade. For budget considerations, the recommendation is to do this in halves, in 2 different phases. The first phase to take effect this March. So the last 3 months of this fiscal year, it would go into effect. And then the second half to go into effect in January of 2022. This would make us competitive at the 50th percentile fully in January 2022. So I'll be happy to answer any questions I can.
Council have any questions for Mr. Harner? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And so, Mr. Harner, thank you for the discussion and obviously all the content that you provided in the packet and through other discussions and emails. So definitely important discussion, and certainly something that I certainly see there is the need for some employee raises and really looking and targeting, just different aspects to make sure that we are strategically ensuring that we're not running into retention issues, et cetera, among other. But I have 2 major concerns with this. One major concern is the fact that, as I've discussed before, similar to, I believe it was 3 or 4 months ago when the $1.5 million was approved for employee bonuses, my issue is the term I brought up, that it's a major financial decision and expenditure being decided in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is, as a city, we have a limited budget. And with that limited budget, it means there's a lot of services and projects that taxpayers really need that we can't afford to pay. And so my issue with why I say this is a decision being made in a vacuum is because we actually had a budget work session earlier today. We're entering budget season. In May or June, we're going to vote on our annual budget, which begins July 1st. And when we go through that process, we're going to find out, what projects can we afford, what services can we afford, and we're going to find out which ones we can't. And you know what? I think a very legitimate discussion and one of those very legitimate proposals would be increasing staff compensation. That's absolutely a very, very important discussion to have, but not to be done in a vacuum, done in the scope of the entire budget so that we can really understand the decisions that we're making. So that's number one about how we're going about it. I think the timing, something like this really should be done in the whole scheme of what is our budget, what is our plan as a city, what is our strategic plan, and how we're affording to do that. And then number two is that this is, again, it's the fact that it's looking across the board. So across the board, an average of 9% raise over the time to all employees. And again, that's where I have issue, because I think I strongly believe that this is something that could and should be done with more data and more clearly focused, and taking into account performance, taking into account different departments, different groups, the vacancies, challenges of retention, all the different aspects. If we're going to be voting on what ultimately turns into a $5.6 million per year expense, there's a lot more thought and discussion that I believe needs to go into it. And that's not something that I believe has occurred. And so for that reason, I just have major concerns with this tonight.
Additional comments from council? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And thank you, Mr. Harner and Mr. Fisher, for the discussion last week. It was very insightful. I too have concerns moving forward, and my concerns are really, some of it was from our conversation, and that just the part that concerns me is that I don't think we have the right plan in the city. And what we're doing is we're continuing to follow a similar plan when we discussed that our highest performing staff are not equitably rewarded or not able to be equitably rewarded based on some of the tranches and the way that the system is set up. And we have an Office of Innovation that we're looking at, and it's part of our strategic plan. I would propose that we look at ways that we can implement a system that rewards the people, the highest performing staff that we have, and that they're not locked into a system where they're not rewarded. The other item that you pointed out, and I thank you for doing that, is that turnover has been, we don't have a turnover problem in the city. Turnover has been trending down over the years. Also, during this time of higher unemployment and the pandemic, perhaps the timing, this timing is not a time to overhaul a plan. But I do think that we need to look at a plan. I think we need to look at a different plan to implement in the city, and with an innovation officer, it might be the time to do that.
Additional questions, comments from council? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, thank you, Mr. Fisher and Mr. Harner, for the presentation and the time last week to meet together. So that was a good meeting, and we all agree to pay a fair and competitive salary to all employees. That is not it's not a discussion. We all agree on that. We also all agree that the city has limited financial resources. Unfortunately, we would all love to have unlimited financial resources so we can do everything that we want and need to be done in the city. So we also have to agree that we have to give priorities to all expenses, to all investments in infrastructure, and to all services. Investment in infrastructure, I'm talking about, transportation projects, parks, public works, all these that benefit directly all of us, the residents, taxpayers, and the people of Roswell. I understand that there are other approaches currently to address, like turnovers and retention, which the good news is that it's not an issue in the city of Roswell, the retention and turnovers, and better compensate those high performance employees. I believe that we always say on the private sector, get bonuses, etc. But there should be a way on the public sector as well to compensate the high performance employees, to make them feel that they are taken in consideration, they are appreciated, and they will be compensated for their performance, high performance throughout the year. Then and we can tackle those two by promote the position to to promote the position. One option could be promote the position to a higher pay grade. We discussed this last week in a specific position that will be promoted to the next level of the grade. So that is one option to tackle the issue. The other one is promote the higher performer employees to a higher position, therefore to a higher pay grade. And there is a third one that is increased salary within the 60%, because in the city of Roswell, we have 60% range between the minimum salary and the maximum salary per grade. So you have room to move people in this range. So increased salary within the 60% range spread of the pay grade is another option to reward the high performers employee. Because at the end of the day, what we really want to do is to get all these people who have high performers recognition, the level of recognition that they deserve. So there's other ways than just 9% across the board that affect, benefit everybody. The high performance only 9%, and the one that is not high performance also get a 9%. So I believe that there should be other ways, more laser target, to tackle those two main issues, which is, at the end of the day, is those two main issues: retention and better compensate high performance employees. So how it's presented today is going to be hard for me right this minute to support.
Member Judy.
Thank you, Mayor. So we did a study. Before the study, we heard for a while that we were underpaying our employees. I think the study came out and showed that we were underpaying our employees. The heart of getting things done in the city is to have the best employees and to be competitive with surrounding cities. I'd like to ask Mr. Harner if he feels like as positions turn over in the city at some point, because they do at some point, whether being 9% behind would hurt us competitively to get the best and the brightest in the city of Roswell.
Yes, sir. We have run into, particularly at the end of the life cycle of our current pay grades. And that's what we're talking about here, is that it's best practice to look every 4 or 5 years at your pay grades, because like it or not, any good or service that's purchased on the market, we may not like what the price is, but when you go to replace that position, you will be subject to market forces. Even if you don't think that internally that position is worth that, the market has spoken. That is the range for that item. Buying a car, buying a house, buying a meal, whatever, the market is the market. So in order to be competitive in the market, we have run into, and that's a good point, not only does it affect retention, which right now in many departments is not a problem. We'd like it to keep it that way, by the way. But when you do have turnover, then when you go to advertise the position at this lower market inadequate rate, some folks, particularly good folks, may not apply at all. If they do apply, and we've seen this in a lot of positions, refuse collectors, crew workers, a lot of those type truck drivers, CDLs, or there's a high competition in the market for commercial truck drivers. We see this where, hey, I'll come work for you, Roswell, but not at that pay range. You're going to have to pay me this because here's what I'm making over here. Well, then our choice is, do we bring in that brand new employee higher than what the current Roswell, his current Roswell peers are making? See, so you run into not only retention issues, and even if those aren't a big problem now, when you go to hire to replace those positions, yes, sir, we end up with that. So then we either have to pass on that person, leave the position open, or bring them at a higher rate. And then we address that. We'll adjust the other employees as we can, but it just becomes more prevalent. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Harner. I feel kicking this can down the road is the term that's often used here. It's going to hurt us in the long run, if not short term. We have some pretty important positions open right now. Fire chief, community development director is probably going to be one of the most important hires we make in a long time. Department of Innovation that Councilmember Hall spoke about. Economic director, which we're going to be competing with people around us. I think that if we don't address this now, we will start to A, lose people, and B, we won't recruit the best and the brightest to City of Roswell that will ultimately affect the performance from City Hall to our citizens and residents. I understand the give and take here, but without good staff and us keeping up with the surrounding communities, I think it puts us in peril. I'm not a compensation specialist, so I, really don't question the report that I've read, and I think it's, we've done the homework. Now it's time to act on that, and I support this evening.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, I know we have a lot of infrastructure and new capital needs that we need to discuss as part of the budget. But I also don't want us to forget that a big part of what we do as a city is provide services to our residents. And, we have a 600 employee member, organization that does that. I mean, everything from public safety to waste management and recycling, parks and recreation, all the programs and maintenance that they bring us, all the things that transportation does as far as road repair, stormwater, administration for the businesses, and managing the taxes and the budgets that come in. And I think that, investing in our organization and our people is very important and should be a priority for us as well. So, I appreciate the fact that this study's been done by compensation experts, and I also believe that we should move forward just to make sure that we retain and attract the highest quality of people to deliver the services that our citizens expect.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And I don't think I've heard anybody say that we shouldn't look at compensation and we shouldn't address how to support our staff. What I think I've heard is two differing views. One view is that tonight, without much of a deep dive, without really getting into really targeting things, we should just give across all 600 employees, give approximately, on average, a 9% raise, versus we should look at really targeting what is the right way to set up the right structure going forward. And that's something that I think is going to be a lot more effective and a lot more efficient for taxpayers. And because I'll tell you right now, with it, the plan here, if I understood correctly, is even that approximately 9% is potentially getting to around the median or something along those lines. And I think in looking at the data, I think there's some questions that I actually think are questions we really should be all asking. But more importantly is this organization, like many others, have top performers, and the top performers, what if that's not enough? And then at the same time, what we're doing is we're spreading it across the board and not looking at performance, not looking at where they're the issues, because the irony is, Councilman Judy, you brought up some great points. We've got a new fire chief we're hiring. We've got a head of economic development, an economic development director that we're going to hire. We've got a community development director that we're going to hire. And what right there was being done was the fact that talking about we have strategic needs that we need to target. And that's not what this does. This just says, you know what, let's just go ahead and start spending $5.6 million per year without actually strategically looking at it. In fact, we approve this. We're going to permanently increase our budget by $5.6 million. And then we're still going to have issues that we're not addressing. So I actually absolutely love Councilmember Hall's point that this is completely a topic that we need to work with a new innovation director on, and really focus on how do we really become a leader instead of just a follower and just throwing lots of money at it. And at the end of the day, yeah, our clients, well, I was gonna say customers, and I think is a good way to look at it, but really our citizens, who are also are both our customers and our bosses, they do want great service. And again, one of the major issues deals with transportation, deals with traffic. And we cannot afford projects that we've approved, whether it's a project to improve an add a turn lane that's been needed for years and suggested by RDOT that we need, being told now that we actually can't afford it because we have other projects come up, that we tell we as a council unanimously support adding lights near where there's some Alpharetta ones, but in Roswell. And then it turns out that actually the city doesn't have enough money to do that, despite council saying that. I think we all could name 5, 10, 15 things that we've wanted to do, that citizens have wanted us to do. And unfortunately, even some things that this council has voted on where staff's saying we don't have enough money. And so my point is, again, we don't just kick the can down the road. We don't just ignore this important need and this important discussion. My point is we do two things. One, we don't discuss this in a vacuum. We discuss this among all our expenses, all our requests. We really understand, do we have $5.6 million per year to be allocating? That's number one. But number two, and probably even more importantly, we do this in a way that is actually going to be successful long-term and more efficient for the taxpayers than just automatically, giving this very large raise to every single employee. So again, I'm disappointed to hear that there's such disagreement, because I think we're all agreement what the need is. We just really feel there's a different way to best accomplish for our taxpayers and for our city.
Let me interject my thoughts. I personally feel that we're talking about two different things. The pay and classification study, it's not if we adopt it in some shape or form, it's when. It's when do we adopt it? How do we phase it in? Because pay and classification are very important to the way we do business here in Roswell. That's how we attract employees. That's how we lose employees. I just had a conversation today about the truck drivers. I also had a conversation about fire captains, and the disparity that we've got in our pay grades are affecting the talent that we can hire and the talent that we retain. I would encourage you all to look at some of our neighboring cities, but what I firmly believe is there are two separate issues. Yes, we need to support the high performers. We need to pay them well. We need to encourage our staff to become high performers. But then at the same time, we've got a basic need to update our pay grades, because our pay grades are not competitive in the marketplace right now. So I think there are two separate things that we need to be moving toward. Now, for me, it's like I said, it's not if we adopt this, it's when and how we phase it in. So what staff is proposing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we phase in half of this study for this upcoming fiscal year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And then we could also look at it and do a third this next fiscal year, and a third the following year, and then a third the third year. We can look at it going that way. But to do nothing on these pay grades are really going to cripple our hiring practices as well as our retention practices. This is just a fact of life, these pay grades. It's just a fact of life. So I think that we should look at this in from two different standpoints. One is our high performers, really looking at how we encourage people to become high performers and how we encourage or financially reward the high performers. That's one thing. The other thing is a basic pay grade. So if you've got a pay grade as a administrative assistant, I don't even know what they are, 1. Well, there's a description to that. And if you're looking for a job, you're going to look and see what Milton's paying, what Johns Creek is paying, what Sandy Springs, how that pay grade, how those job descriptions differ or are very closely aligned. So I think we need to look at two things here. And one is not mutually exclusive of the other. Additional comments? Yes, Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, Mayor Henry, thank you. And I agree. I think that this compensation study addresses the ranges across the board and makes us competitive with other cities, and that looking at high performers is something that we can do and should do separately. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion for approval of item number 8.
Let me see if we have additional discussion.
Okay.
Councilmember Wilsey, do we have a motion?
Yes.
Councilmember Hall, just raise your hand.
Sorry. Thank you. I just wanted to, the study that Evergreen did, there's multiple types of studies that can be performed, and they sampled 46 positions and did an average. I had requested, and it was awfully late before this meeting, just to see what the standard deviations were in more of these lines, because just going through some of the examples as we sat together, Roswell was actually paying higher in positions where perhaps we would be better suited, instead of paying higher in that position, to pay higher in the driver example. For this is a very blended average study that doesn't speak to Roswell's needs. That's one of my points. And I think that I don't want to kick the can down the road. I think we have a budget session, and I think we can follow up to do something better for Roswell and pull in our innovation person to help us do it. That's my point.
Councilmember Hall, please help me. I'm a little confused. Generally, our human resource director guides us in matters of salaries, classification studies, compensation studies. Are you proposing that an innovation officer would now that would supersede our human resource director? I'm confused here.
I'm not proposing that. I would propose that he would work hand in hand with the human resource director and with Evergreen, if that's the firm of choice to perform the study. But I believe there is a better way for Roswell to reward all of its staff. And maybe that cost is $5 million, but I believe there's a better way than just doing this, just rushing this through and doing this average plan. That's my position.
Well, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you basically saying that Mr. Horner and Mr. Fisher and Evergreen have not made sufficient decisions, so you would like to bring someone else in to help them make better decisions?
What I'm suggesting is this is perhaps the way that it's been done traditionally, kind of the caveat that this is the way we've always done it. And I'm proposing that we look at it in a different, new, more innovative light and let Roswell be a leader and get and retain great employees. I think they've done, you know, what they've been directed to do, of course. But this is a new world, and it's a new way to retain and reward employees, and we should be looking at that opportunity.
I understand. Councilmember Tizer.
I just have a couple of questions for Jim Harner that will help me make a decision here tonight. As I look at the exhibit that shows me the breakdown of our employees, of the non-police employees, of which there are roughly 370, whatever that number is. Can you give me some idea how many of those are paid on an hourly basis? So for example, some of the public works people, are drivers, those folks, are they hourly?
Yeah, typically drivers, crew workers, equipment operators, those would be non-exempt or hourly positions, yes.
Do you have a feel for, of that roughly 370 or so, how many of those might be hourly exempt?
On an hourly basis, I would venture to say, I'd have to pull the numbers, I'd venture to say that, 50-60% might be non-exempt or hourly, but I'd have to look at that.
Thank you. That's helpful. That sort of range is all I was trying to understand.
Right.
Sorry, I was muted. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So just want to point out that staff and consultant make recommendation, but this mayor and council, which is a governing body, is the one who make a decision. I heard that, decisions is made by others, but I want to clarify that the only one who can make this kind of decision is the governing body, which is mayor and council elected officials.
Well, yes, we all agree with you, Councilmember Zapata, that the mayor and council make decisions. I'm not quite sure who you were referring to as making decisions, but no, this is our decision to make. Additional comments from council? Councilmember Wilsey, do I have a motion?
Yes, I would like to make an initial motion and see where we go. Motion, item number 8, approval to implement employee pay range and pay increases as recommended by the 2020 Compensation and Classification Study, and approval of budget amendment 22221 in the amount of $934,105.
Got a motion by Councilmember Wilsey. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Councilmember Judy. Did you have a question or?
Second.
Okay, you kind of blipped on the screen there, sorry. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it is Councilmember Judy, Wilsey, and Tizer. All those opposed is Zapata, Hall, and Palermo. I will break the tie in support of the motion. The motion passes. We are adjourned.